Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Laura, and today's video is going to be the reading vlog for Randomathon. Randomathon is a 2-week-long readathon hosted by Maci over at the Bright Side Girl. It's called Randomathon because unlike some of her other readathons that she does annually, her readathon for the month of February is one where she's going to switch out the theme. It's going to be a random theme every year, and this year it is circus slash festival slash theme park themed, and I'm so excited for it. Maci always comes up with really great reading prompts for her readathons, which I really love. She also comes up with really fun and unique photo prompts where you can post photos on Instagram and enter into her giveaways that way. She has also created a Spotify playlist. I have been enjoying the heck out of the circus themed one that she put together for this year. There are a lot of great songs that I already know and love on that playlist, but also a lot of songs that were like new to me that I had never heard of, and they all fit with the vibe of the readathon so well. I love listening to the Spotify playlist like on a very low volume as I'm reading the books. At the time I'm filming this, we're actually several days into the readathon, but I have only just barely begun my reading for it. It's the weekend now, so I should have plenty of time to tackle some of the reading for the readathon. I've been enjoying all the extras along the way. I just haven't had a ton of time to do some reading yet. I have started one book though, so I'll get into what I'm thinking about this in just a minute, but I have started reading Joyland by Stephen King. This is for the reading prompt of set at a theme park, so we'll talk about this one in just a minute. First, I want to share with you the other books that I plan on reading for this reading vlog. The next reading prompt is The Curtains on the Cover, and for that I have Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. The next reading prompt is Misfit Characters, and so I have chosen The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. One that I'm going to be listening to exclusively on audiobook is The Librarian of Crooked Lane by CJ Archer. So this one is for the reading prompt of magic or illusion, because this is kind of, I believe, like a blend of different genres. I think it's kind of like a historical fiction romantasy, I think. I really don't know a whole lot about this one. I just saw that it was available in audiobook on the Hoopla app, and I saw that there are some like magical realism type of elements to it. That is the plan for the readathon. So let me talk about Joyland that I've started reading already for this vlog. The main character in the book is Devin Jones. He's a 21-year-old college student who decides to apply to work at Joyland, a theme park, for like a summer job. King is a detail-oriented guy. We get a lot about like the work that they do at Joyland and how it all works and operating the machines. And Devin is somebody who dresses up as like the theme mascot. He's quite good at it. He really has a way to like bring the kids in. It seems like he really cares about the children that are coming to the theme park. He has some pretty like, you know, thoughtful thoughts about them. Like he seems to really care about the kids' well-being. I don't really want to spoil like anything in this book, but at some point, at the point that I'm at now, he has also met this young boy who's in pretty bad shape health-wise. He's in a wheelchair, and so he's kind of befriended this little boy and his mom because their house is one that he walks past every day on his way from where he lives for the summer to Joyland, and so he's kind of befriended them at this point. We've been introduced to a ghost that kind of haunts a part of the theme park. The ghost is a woman who was murdered at the theme park years ago, and it's kind of like a cold case, like an unsolved murder situation. How all of this is going to fit together, I really don't know yet, but obviously I'm not going to spoil anything for you in this vlog either, so I don't know how much I'll be able to say about how that all pieces together. But one thing I know about King is that he's pretty good at making all the pieces of the puzzle fit in the end. So I'm going to finish reading this hopefully tonight or tomorrow at the latest, and then I'll share my final thoughts about this book, and then we'll jump into the next one. Should be a really good time. It's Super Bowl Sunday and I've got my Chiefs shirt on, ready to cheer them on. We actually just got back home because we went to a really fun little festival in St. Charles, Missouri. This is the first year that they have done it, but it was like a Valentine's Day / anti-Valentine's Day themed festival. There were a lot of like historical figures and literary figures. We had Casanova and Romeo and Juliet, and all the wives of Henry VIII were there. They were really hilarious. That was a super fun time, and there are a lot of little shops on that historical Main Street area of St. Charles. So I went into a little bookshop down there and I picked up the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I am slowly but surely trying to collect all of Grady Hendrix's books, even though I haven't read all of them. I'm just assuming that he's like an auto-buy author for me. I just read his author's note, and from that alone I was like, yep, I'm interested. So I'm super excited to have this one. And whenever I was picking this up from the bookstore, I didn't even know, but they said that they were doing like a surprise like blind date with a book. So this says that it's middle grade, a mysterious free library guarded by a big orange cat. Yay. So I don't know, I thought I would open this up with you. It says that they are celebrating 30 years at Main Street Books in St. Charles. All right, let's open it up together and see what we got. This is called The Lost Library. I love that illustration on the cover, by Rebecca Steed and Wendy Mass. I've never heard of this before, but I just read the little synopsis. It sounds like we're gonna get like a multiple POV, one by a ghost librarian named Al, an aging but beautiful cat named Mortimer, and then an 11-year-old named Evan. Apparently this little free library appears out of nowhere in this small town, and Evan comes and chooses a couple books from it, and odd things happen. Sounds like maybe a little bit of magical realism. That should be a cute little read, and you guys know that I like reading books with my kiddos, so I will probably read it first and then read it with my kiddos after that. So yeah, it was a really fun time down at that little festival. We're getting ready to watch the Super Bowl now. My husband just went outside to get the animals taken care of for that, and then he's gonna come in and make some chicken wings and a nacho bar. I did take a break from reading last night and watched The Greatest Showman instead, kind of in the same spirit of the theme for this week. The Greatest Showman is one of my like top favorite movies of all time. I love it so much. I love the soundtrack, the acting, the whole storyline. Everything is so great. So even though I've seen that movie several times before, it's always a great time watching that one. I did finish reading Joyland this morning and I have some thoughts about it. I was kind of between like a 3.5 to 4 star. I think maybe more like a 3.5 for me. The pitch for this book is kind of like a mashup between mystery and horror, and I would say it's a lot more towards the mystery side. There are some like paranormal elements, but there's really not much to that. Like the paranormal element plays such a small role. I think that's why I am kind of giving it a little bit of a lower rating, like a 3.5, just because I wish that it leaned in either more into like the mystery storyline, or that it maybe had a little bit more of the horror, since that's what the book is like pitched as. I did really love our main character in here, Dev, and the little boy that he ends up meeting that has like this chronic illness, Mike, and his mom, Annie. I really liked the whole dynamic between all the different characters. I felt though at the beginning like it was kind of slow to get into. There's a lot at the beginning about like working at the theme park and all the different language that they speak, and I felt like, I don't know, it was kind of interesting, but it also just felt like a research dump, so to speak, you know, like he was just really going into a lot of detail, which King is known to do. So that's kind of to be expected with one of his books. He's not gonna leave out details. That's one thing. I did like the way that he kind of drops all the different puzzle pieces. He drops things that like you know is gonna end up being basically like a spoiler. Like now you kind of know what's gonna happen several sections later in the book, but you just don't know exactly how it's all gonna fit together up until the very end. All in all, it was still a really fun time. Glad that I read it. If you like King and you've never read this, I think it would be worth the time spent reading it. It's a pretty short one, especially for a King novel. You know, he can get pretty wordy. You can definitely tell that this is written from a male's perspective, and I even had a thought at one point, like, how many times are we gonna have to listen to him describe a female breast, you know? Like, oh my gosh, like every woman that this kid meets, that's how he's describing them, and I get it, like he's a 21-year-old male. I will say though, I think King is pretty self-aware, because kind of towards the beginning, after about the third mention of a woman's breast, he says, I'm not sure men know how to talk about women in any meaningful way. So at least he's self-aware. 3.5 stars for that one. I'm gonna move on to The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick next. This should be a pretty good one. I have it on audiobook as well that I rented from the Hoopla app. And so I think I'm going to do like an immersive reading. That's how I like to read these types of books, is to have the audiobook and physical book in hand at the same time. But it's probably not going to happen today because the rest of the day is going to be spent cheering on the Chiefs. For you. One is good news, one is not so good news. The not so good news is that I think I'm gonna DNF The Librarian of Crooked Lane. I've literally only listened to like 2 chapters so far, but I'm just not into it. Have you ever done that with an audiobook where you're just not getting into it and you find your mind wandering elsewhere because you're just not very interested in the story that you're trying to listen to? I've literally gone back and restarted the entire thing twice now and only made it to like chapter 3, and I'm still just not feeling it. I'm just not getting into it. I don't think that it's the type of book for me, and so I don't want to waste, you know, more time on it than I already have. I think that's going to be a DNF. I haven't heard much talk about that book. If it happens to be one that you have read and loved, please tell me about it in the comments, and then maybe at some point I'll go back and try to read it again, maybe in the physical format. Maybe it's just that the audiobook wasn't doing it for me. The good news of this update is that I am halfway through with The Invention of Hugo Cabret. This is divided into 2 different parts, and it's super interesting the way that they kind of set the book up in the beginning. So in their introduction section, they talk about how this is meant to kind of be an immersive experience for you to get the feeling like you're kind of watching this the same way that you would a movie. So it's very different than anything that I have read, even different than the other Brian Selznick book that I've read before. I do really love the illustrations. I think those are quite beautiful. I don't know that I'm like super loving the characters though. I think I just need to give it a chance and get through the second part of it. I'll save most of my thoughts for when I finish the book, but I do want to mention that it kind of irritates me, some of the dialogue of this. They like to ask each other questions, all of these characters, and then the character that's being asked the question responds with like another question, or like just they never answer the questions when a question is asked in dialogue. And I just find that, like, I don't know, maybe that's kind of a petty thing, but I just kind of find that annoying because it happens a lot. And maybe it's more noticeable because I'm also listening to it in the audiobook. Overall, I'm enjoying it, don't get me wrong. I just find that to be kind of interesting that they never answer each other's questions. Moving on, I'm going to finish reading this, and I also think I'm going to pick up Water for Elephants and start that tonight as well, because I should be able to finish this one pretty quickly. It's a very, very fast middle grade read. Just like that, we're on the final day of the readathon. I have finished The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and I'm a good ways into Water for Elephants, so let me update you. I really wanted to love The Invention of Hugo Cabret, but here's my thing. It's gonna be like a 3-star read for me versus Big Tree that I read from him last month that was a 4-star read. If it wasn't for the graphics, it would probably be lower than a 3-star read for me, and it makes me so sad because I know this book is like so loved by so many people. I just didn't really care for the characters. honestly, like even little Hugo, I don't know if I ever even like kind of gave a synopsis for this. So Hugo Cabret is this little boy who is living basically inside the walls of a train station. He was orphaned and he was taken in by his uncle, who kind of taught him how to work and care for the clocks inside this train station. And so Hugo learned to do that from him, but then his uncle just like disappeared and we don't know where he went. Hugo was left to his own devices basically, and so he also learned how to like steal. So he's like this little thief just trying to survive on his own. But his father was like a clockworker, toy maker of some sort, and he had this like invention that he had drawn. And so Hugo has kind of made it his like life mission how to recreate like the toy from his father's drawings. And there's some mystery though, like was his father actually the one who created those designs? There's an older man who's like a toy maker, toy shop owner, and a little girl. They all kind of meet together. It's like a historical fiction, so this is based on a real person who was like a filmmaker and a beautiful artist. I really did love the graphics in this, don't get me wrong. It almost feels like the author like took an outline of like, okay, these are the key points to the plot, and then that's what the book is. Like there's not a lot of connection between like the main parts of the plot. There's just not, I don't know, I just didn't find like that there was a really good flow to this. It was okay, like this was a 3-star read for me. Fine time. I think some people definitely like this more than I did. I'm not mad that I read it by any means. It was just okay. As soon as I finished Hugo Cabret, I started Water for Elephants, and it is going pretty slowly for me, honestly. I don't know, I might be like in a little bit of a reading slump, and so I'm quite a ways into it though so far, so I'm determined to get through it. It won't be a DNF at this point. I've made it too far to turn back now. It is a very sad, depressing kind of read, so just know that first and foremost if you want to pick this book up. Like you really have to be in a good, strong mental headspace, I think, to read this. We have a dual timeline, so it follows the main character Jacob at 2 different points of his life. One, when he's very young, he was in veterinary school, and then something tragic happened in his life and it led him to join this circus that travels the country by train. It's set during the time of Great Depression, that timeline. And then the other part of the timeline is Jacob when he is elderly. He's about 90 years old and he's in a nursing home, and so it's going through kind of what his daily life is like at that point too. Both of the timelines are really more of like a slice of life. Like you're just kind of following his daily interactions with the other people in his environment in 2 very like different environments and different time periods, you know. I did just join Hannah's reading sprints this morning from the Teacher's TBR is her channel name, so my goal is to finish up this book during the reading sprints. The reading sprints were super productive. I finished Water for Elephants. I am going to read, there's like discussions with the author at the very back of the book. I already read the author's note. Tragic. And I don't know, I need to like sit and marinate and think about what my final thoughts are on this book. It's like not really clear cut how I'm feeling about it right now. So let me think about it. I do want to read like the discussion with the author and the question and answer at the end of it. And maybe that'll give me a little more insight into what I'm thinking. It's the next day and I have thought about Water for Elephants and my final rating for this book. And I think I landed at about a 3.5. Honestly, if I hadn't read like the Q&A with the author in the back and gotten a few of my questions answered, it might have been even lower. Like I was really considering like a 2.5 or 3 star at first, but some of the things that the author said did make a little bit more sense of the book for me. My knee-jerk reaction and why I was going to rate this a little bit lower at first was because this has a storyline following Jacob as he has joined the circus. He gets involved in like a love triangle with August, who is kind of like the lead over all of the animals and the animal performers in the circus, and his wife Marlena, who is also a performer in the circus with the horses. The love triangle thing I really didn't mind. It just seemed like everything would be going along just fine, and it's like the author thought, oh, let me add this bit of conflict here, and then we'll go along a little bit and let me add a little bit more conflict. It seemed like conflict just for conflict's sake, you know, like just like because nothing was really happening in the book in that moment, and the author felt like, oh, I need to add something in here to keep the interest level high. It just didn't seem like all the different conflicts really fit with the overall storyline, if that makes sense. But then when I read the Q&A, like a lot of those pieces that I think I was feeling felt a little bit off for the story were all based on real facts, like real events that happened on circus trains when the author was doing her research, and she wanted to include those. And also I think just to show like the messiness of the circus life. But like I said, as a reader, you're just kind of feeling like they just didn't flow with the storyline in the way that they were told. It's an interesting, messy, stressful life that these circus performers lead. Stressful for the animals, like abusive for the animals. I think there's really good conversations here, and I feel like that's why probably a lot of people like this book, is because it really does shed a lot of light on how wrong it was to have like these animals on trains shipped to who knows where and barely taken cared for, like not even having their bare minimum needs met at some points. And the humans too, like just as much as the animals sometimes were being abused and not cared for, humans in this book were also. And then we also had the other part of the story, which was Jacob as he is older, and just a little bit about like the aging process. And I think there were some like stereotypes that were a little cringy. There are some conversations about like ageism and things like that here, and how elderly people are sometimes seen and treated or mistreated in some cases. So yeah, like I said, it was a tough read. I had some problems with it. I did actually really like the love triangle situation that was going on. I liked the way everything was ended, but yeah, I think it's a 3.5 star for me. So if you really think about it, like all in all, these were all kind of like middle of the road books, and then I DNF'd The Librarian of Crooked Lane, so not the best like in terms of reading here lately. I would say Joyland was probably my most favorite read, a 3.5, and then Water for Elephants, also a 3.5, but just less enjoyable, mostly because it was like harder topics to get through. And then 3 stars with The Invention of Hugo Cabret. But, you know, I'm glad that I've read all of them. Thank you so much to Maci for hosting this, as always, and her next readathon is in March, and it's called Galaxyathon. I have way too many books planned for that TBR. It's unrealistic, the amount of books that I am wanting to try to get through during that readathon. Probably need to cut my list in half, but I have some good ones, so I'll be sharing that soon in my March TBR video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, for all of your support. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.